Hello, I'm so pleased to see everyone here tonight because the most important thing about this whole process is that it's not a box-ticking exercise that happens once every 2 years and we all go away and think, we've put women in the spotlight, we've done our bit, and we all just relax back and things recede to where they were. We need to keep the momentum up, we need to keep talking, keep networking, keep following all the advice that Alice talked about and some of the stuff I'm going to come up with. There's a group of people here in this room tonight who will start, and I'm sure already have started, building connections that will set you in good store throughout the rest of your career. And that's a really important starting point. And the more we all get out there and keep the principles of Women of Tomorrow going week in, week out, the better we will all be and the better people coming up behind us will be. Right, when I did my judging day, which was so intense, incredibly inspiring, quite terrifying, I felt like every woman that I interviewed seem to have twice as many hours in their day as I do. I don't know how you do it, but I was awed by everybody I met. But one of the things that I kept thinking as all these amazing women came before me was, where on earth have you all been? I sit at my desk at Campaign. We get held to account, quite rightly, by senior women in the industry about how we cover women, how many women we have in the magazine. We went through a period about 18 months ago where I used to get regular emails where people had gone through and literally counted how many women are in Campaign. And the first time it happened, I thought it was really annoying, particularly because we tend to focus on the senior people in the industry, and right now the senior executives are more often than not male. So it's not necessarily my fault that there are more women in those senior roles, but I quickly came to embrace the whole spirit of it. And yes, of course, we should try harder to feature women. And we've made it a real policy on the magazine to seek out senior and up-and-coming women who are really talented and have something to say. But it isn't always that easy to find people. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's not always easy to find people that will return phone calls, who we even know. And one of the things I felt when I was interviewing some of the women was, if only I knew you existed for the last few years, you would have been perfect for this or that. And I thought, it's a real shame that the people further up your companies haven't been pushing you forwards to people like me, is one thing. But also, of course, we all must take responsibility ourselves for our own profile in the industry. So, we need to encourage you, and you need to have the confidence to put your hand up and seek out the spotlight, which is something I wanted to talk a little bit more about. I wanted to talk really about the power of brands and the power of your brand, and how to apply some marketing techniques to building your own career. It seems like it shouldn't really be a difficult conversation to have in this room, given the industry in which we all work. But it's amazing how few companies in our space, but particularly few talented people, actually treat themselves as they might treat their clients' brands, and nurture your profile and understand your consumer and how to appeal to them. The people who have the most profile in our industry, I think, are the people. They are brands. And they're more valued because they're better known, they're more widely respected, they're more celebrated than their anonymous peers. And these are the people that journalists like me go to for quotes, and it becomes this sort of virtuous circle, of course. They're invited to speak on platforms, they're people who go on TV to talk about our industry, they're the celebrities of our industry, and they command a particularly special value because of that. And it's not because they're more talented, but certainly smarter when it comes to putting themselves forward. Of course, they're excellent at what they do, they work hard and they get results. But there are plenty of people in this business who are really smart, who are excellent at what they do, who do get results. We never hear of them, and they never achieve the same sort of status and command the same level of respect as some of the people that are more confident and outgoing when it comes to attracting attention to themselves. I think it's a failure of people if they haven't taken every opportunity to get a platform for what they do. It really amazes me that people who work in advertising and marketing are so slack when it comes to marketing themselves. So why aren't we better at that? You know, I'm sure even the best of us have moments where we think, oh, I don't want to put myself forward for that. I think it is really important. As editor of Campaign, I know over the last few years I've seen how the most successful people in this industry are the ones that know how to put themselves forward, how to generate some fame for themselves, and how to leverage the power of PR to ensure that they're not just one of the pack. And I think maybe we're a little bit nervous about wanting to chase a bit of fame. Maybe it seems a bit grubby or a bit desperate, maybe a bit egotistical. And some of those traits are things that play less well to the sort of way women like to operate within business. I think we don't want to be seen to be constantly talking about ourselves and waving our own flag. But it's really the shrewd way to manage your own career, and it's a shrewd way to manage the success of the people coming up behind you, because it encourages them to follow your example, and it allows you to establish yourself as a role model for young people coming into the industry. And the more famous you are, even as a junior, the more likely you are to get promoted, I believe, or poached, or the more likely you are to get on the client's radar, and the more likely you are to be given the opportunity to prove what you can do. And I think if this whole sort of austerity and the sort of financial difficulties we've all been through over the last few years has proved to me more than anything else, is that at the end of the day, a lot of us are just numbers on some corporate spreadsheet. And that's quite a vulnerable place to be. I think it's up to us to take responsibility for making sure that we're more than just a number on somebody's presentation, and that we're not just a cost on some line somewhere. Of course, you have to be good at what you do, but everybody in this room is good at what they do, because you wouldn't be here if you hadn't been promoted by somebody to be a potential woman of tomorrow or to win. So we're already all on that journey. All you have to do is make sure you've got a very thick skin to deal with the downside of becoming a brand in this industry. Putting your head above the parapet can be an uncomfortable position to be in. I have no idea what this woman at JWT who filed the lawsuit against her boss, I don't know what she's feeling right now, but she's certainly put her head above the parapet. And she's got some flack for that, but she's also got an enormous amount of support. So if she can go for it, then in such a difficult situation, then I think we can all just put our hands up sometimes and say, I've got an opinion and it's worth being heard. I think Alice mentioned some obvious ways to make yourself a bit more famous. Write a blog, tweet, write a letter even to an industry magazine like mine on a subject you feel strongly about. I mean, I think you underestimate sometimes the desperation the media feel when they're faced with this bottomless bucket that's the internet, where we need content all the time, or plethora of blank pages every week that we need to fill. We need a strong opinion. We need people who have something to say. And as I said earlier, we are really keen to hear more from the women in our industry. So that should be encouragement enough. I just wanted to finish with a few sort of, I suppose they're pretty obvious business tips, if you like. But I've been around a long time in this industry, and I still see these things happen. I judged some NABS sort of nurturing program for young people in the industry a few months ago, And I sat through 2 presentations where all of the people on the stage doing the pitch were the young guys, and the women were the ones standing at the side pressing the clicker for the PowerPoint. That's crap. We should never allow that to happen. You need to stand up and make sure that you are part of this. So these tips I'm going to give you, they sound obvious, but I see them not happening all the time. So the first one, be present in meetings. I sit through lots of meetings where there's 2 particular guys I work with on either side of the Atlantic, and they're both alpha males, and they both have really loud voices, and they're both quite theatrical, and it's quite hard to get a word in edgeways sometimes. But the very worst thing I know I can do, and any of us can do, is not to say anything in any meeting and to be the one sitting there quietly, allowing everyone else to do the talking. So be an active participant in every meeting. Don't just talk for the sake of it, but make sure you've got something to say. Because people are going to think you don't have the ideas, you lack the confidence or the talent if you don't say anything. Meetings are your stage in this business. You have to learn to join the business conversation and confidently express your ideas. Stay on brand, as I said. We are all brands. If you want to be successful, you have to get out there and make sure that people know who you are. Really successful women know what they stand for, and they're authentic and consistent in every way that they present themselves, whether it's participating in meetings or leaving voice messages on the phone, sending emails, attending corporate events. You know, they have this presence, they have this brand, they know who they are. Of course, you mustn't lose sight of what your genuine nature is. If you're naturally a little bit quieter, then there's no point pretending that you're going to be the one sort of doing the jazz hands at the front of the room. But just make sure that everything you do underlines your own personal brand positioning. I think Alice touched on this. Don't undermarket yourself. You know, humility can be a virtue, but you can take it too far, believe me. Apparently women are much more likely to downplay their accomplishments. There's study after study after study to this effect, this sort of female humility effect. And men have this sort of male hubris effect, and where I hate generalizations, but again, I see it often. The men are the ones who over-talk what they can do, and the women are much more humble. And there are times to be humble, but there are times to say, to tell everybody and let everybody know you've done a bloody good job. If you don't market yourself, who else is going to do it? And that sort of leads into my next point. You know, fake it. Fake it until you make it. Women are notorious at feeling like they're not ready for the next step up until they can tick off every little box of characteristics required for the next role. And blokes, on the other hand, sometimes they don't necessarily have the qualifications, but they have the confidence. Like I said, I hate making generalizations, and I hate the sort of cliches of men and women, but I've seen examples of this, and I just go for it, you know. Force yourself to stretch, to go after the sort of assignments that are going to stretch you, even if you're not entirely sure you're ready. I went to a WACL talk a few months ago, and it was Mariella Frostrup, and the subject of female quotas on boards came up. And she said, people always say, oh, if we have quotas, there are going to be some women that are promoted to the boards when they're not good enough or they're not ready. She said, that's bullshit. We've had men on boards who aren't good enough for decades and decades and decades. You know, if a few women get onto boards and they're not quite there yet, we'll live with it, because we've had to deal with subpar blokes running company boards for long enough. I just cannot iterate this thing enough. Be visibility minded. Make yourself well known inside your company and outside your company. I was talking earlier today to a man who works at Omnicom, who'd been to an event they held last week for Women's Day, and they have this event called Omni Women. I don't know if any of you were there. And he was talking about diversity, and he's a very keen advocate of diversity, but he said, I looked at all these women at Omni Women, the Omni Women event, and It's great, they're all women, but they're all the same. You know, let's be different, let's look different, let's celebrate our differences. We have, it's a sort of, maybe sounds like a flippant point, but we have the opportunity to be more colourful, literally, in the way we wear, in the way we dress, in the way we do our hair. You know, let's not be afraid to stand out. When I think of some of the characters that I've written about in my career, sort of quirky, interesting people you meet in advertising, the ones that look a bit odd and are a bit odd, and there aren't many women I can think of that fall into that, oh, interesting, weird, odd. I'd love it if we were celebrating our sort of differences a bit more rather than everyone trying to sort of look very professional. And I can understand why, because we have to project even more perhaps than our male peers, but we have to project this impression of authority and professionalism. But, you know, that means that we're more likely to get lost in the crowd. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about building up your own brand. So get out there and just look different. Make sure people remember you. Related to that, it's another one that I sort of see a lot of women doing is sort of the way they stand or sit in meetings is really a bit defensive and recessive. I think body language is really, and I'm not good at it, but I think it's a really important thing to think about, is to be sort of expansive and wave your hands around a bit and lean forwards. And it's all these little things that help build up your own presence. And I think they're really important. And the last thing, which is something I have a lot of difficulty with, but it's getting really comfortable with this, the word no. Being able to say no. I'm rubbish at saying no. I'm always the one at some networking event who gets stuck in the corner with somebody that they don't really want to be talking to, but I'm too polite to move on, which is crap in my job. But saying no is something that I'm really bad at, and I know I need to practice it. But being comfortable saying no when it's something that that you're not comfortable with, just say no. If it's something that isn't a good use of your time or doesn't help take you or your company forward, say no. And get used to hearing the word no. Again, it's something I'm really bad at. I don't like to ask for things in case somebody says no, and that makes me feel really uncomfortable and sort of cowering back into my corner, and I'm really aware of that trait in myself, so I try really hard to counter it. But you know, practice saying no, practice somebody saying no to you and feeling good about it and working out how to move on for it. Success takes stamina and patience, and most everybody takes them 3 decades to really reach their sort of peak of their career. So you're going to hear no, and you're going to have to say no quite a few times over that period. I wish you all every success. If you didn't make the cut this year, it's only because we had a very narrow shortlist. And I would encourage you all to have another go because it's an amazing thing. And as I said at the very, very beginning, it's really important we keep this going. So keep going, keep building your own profile, calling up people like me, putting your hand up, being in the spotlight, and enter Women of Tomorrow next time round if you didn't make it. Thank you.